Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? Are you ready? Get ready, dog. Get ready.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Rocket Networker podcast. I'm Rick Longnecker, your host. For nearly 40 years, I've intentionally spent time connecting with University of Toledo alumni around the world. Their stories and success always amaze me. And that's where today's Rocket Networker guest comes in, Dr. Jerry Jakubowski. We connected through Lorraine Hanson, a fellow member of the Rocket Nation in Phoenix, Arizona. Jerry is Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at California Maritime Academy in Vallejo, California. Jerry, thanks for making time in your busy schedule to join us on the Rocket Networker podcast. Welcome.
Rick, thank you very much. I'm happy to be with you.
So listen, I really appreciate you making time today. And I think one of my key questions right now is, how are things in Vallejo, California?
Well, let me bring you up to date, Rick. I served as Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at the California Maritime Academy for 5 years, but I retired in 2014. And so 10 years ago, I retired and now living in the Phoenix area.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. Okay, well, that's great. So let's ask this, and how's retirement going?
Retirement is fantastic. And so here in the Phoenix area, that's how I got involved with Lorraine and the UT alumni organization here.
Okay, that's great. Now, before we go into our podcast a little deeper, talk about the UT Alumni Association in Phoenix. What's that like?
You know, it's an interesting group of people, a small group of people. We typically get 25 to 30 people who come out for the various alumni get-togethers, and it's usually at a restaurant. But interesting for me to meet the alumni that have graduated from many years before me to many years after me.
Yeah, that's fun. My wife and I had the honor of working and setting up the with the UT chapter in New York City for 24 years. And, we love that. We love meeting alumni, and for all the same reasons you just said, people that are right out of school and folks that are in their 80s and 90s, we all share a love of the University of Toledo. So that's great. So real quick, is the way the podcast works, Jerry, is I like to talk about a thing called the threads of connectivity. And in simple terms, all that means is that threads are just the little things that connect us at a personal level. So in business, a lot of folks talk about their elevator pitch and their product lines and service lines, but business is basically done through personal relationships and friendships and trust. And what I found over the years is that the little things that build trust are things like our hometown, our high school, our volunteer work, our college, our children, and the things that our children are involved with. It's just those little things that connect us. So with that in mind, what I'd love to do is take us back in time to your hometown. Where are you from?
I'm originally from Toledo, Ohio. I grew up in North Toledo, went to St. Vincent de Paul grade school, and then went on to Central Catholic High School, graduated from there in 1967.
Okay, that's great. Now, when you were in high school at Central Catholic, what types of things were you involved with?
I was heavily involved in the band, the marching band and the symphony band, and that included me serving as the drum major for the marching band for 2 years, both my junior and senior years.
Wow, that's kind of neat. Now, back in that era, my sister and my brother Paul were both in the Central Catholic band, and I was, if my memory's right, it's Jerry DePrisco. Was
Well,
Jerry the band director then, or not?
oh, he was the director then, absolutely. And if I recall correctly, wasn't your sister Marcia in the marching band?
She was, yes.
And so I knew your sister. Yeah. So I knew your sister back when.
That's great. Well, I'll tell her that you said hello.
Yes, please do.
When you were in your junior and senior year, you're starting to think about life after high school. What were you thinking about? Were you going to join the military? Were you going to go to college? Were you going to go to skilled trade? What was on your mind at that time?
Well, from the time that I was born, my father would always tell me, Jerry, you're going to be an engineer. And so there was no doubt in my mind that when I graduated from Central, that I was going to be going to the University of Toledo and majoring in engineering. And so that was the degree I pursued.
So when you graduated, then did you go right to University of Toledo?
Yes, I graduated in '67 and went to University of Toledo, but I had a non-traditional college college career, if you want to call it that. Uh, I started at Toledo in '67, and it was in I believe it was 1969 or 1970. They had the first lottery for the draft with the Vietnam War. And my number came up number 9. And so, to prevent from getting drafted and going to Vietnam, I joined the Army Reserve, and I joined October 1970, and I had to leave for active duty in 1971, which then meant that I had to quit school, went to active duty, and when I got back and uh, re-enrolled at the university.
So you go and do some time in the military on active duty. You come back to the University of Toledo. What was that like? Do you remember like your first year coming after the military service and then coming into your freshman year there? What was that like?
Well, let me also say that I had somewhat of another non-traditional approach. When I got back from the Army, one of my professors, Dr. William Miller, said, "Hey, Jerry, I've got a great opportunity for you. It's a full-time job working at Interlake Incorporated." And so he said, "I think you should do that." And so I worked at Interlake as an assistant plant engineer, and I was working during the day and then attending classes for my mechanical engineering degree in the evening. And so at first I was taking, one course a quarter, and I said, "Geez, it's going to take me forever to graduate." So then I started taking 2 classes a quarter, and then it's still going to take me forever. So eventually I got to the point where I was working full time during the day and taking full time classes in the evening. And
I
so
guess
that
you.
then required me to working full time and then going immediately to campus and taking my classes. A lot of times I would be up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning doing homework.
So normally my next question is, while you're in college, what types of student groups or things did you get involved with? But it sounds like you were working full time and going 100 miles an hour. I mean, did you have any opportunity to get involved in any of the student things?
Oh, absolutely. And so I joined Triangle Fraternity, and joining Triangle was just a very rewarding experience. I eventually got on the Triangle's National Council, and then ended up serving 2 terms as national president of the fraternity.
That's outstanding. I love that. It's interesting. My freshman year, I was not involved on campus at all. I was just working and going to school. And a friend of mine called up and said, "We're starting a fraternity." And I didn't want to get involved in that, but I went anyway. And that friend changed my life. That choice changed my life. And like you, I've been actively serving my national fraternity now my whole life. And so we share that bond. You still made time to get involved as a student leader on campus.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
How
Yes.
many years did it take you to get your degree?
So, well, let me just say, so I started in '67 and I graduated with my bachelor's degree in 1974.
Okay.
And so I mentioned that I was working full time, going to school full time, and by the time I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I was ready for a nervous breakdown. And
I
so,
bet.
and I was married at the time as well. And so I said, you know what, I think when it got to my senior level classes, things just started to click. Engineering started to make sense to me. And so I said, you know what, I want to get a master's degree. So what I
Okay.
did was I quit work and then went to school full time, getting my master's degree. And when I was working on my master's degree, I started doing some teaching, and I really, really, really enjoyed teaching. I said, well, geez, maybe I ought to get my PhD. That's what prompted me to get my doctorate in mechanical engineering. And
So you did all three of your degrees at the University of Toledo?
that's right. And so got bachelor's in '74, master's '76, and PhD '78.
What was your favorite part of that college experience?
The faculty, I love the faculty. and of course, the friends that you meet in your classes. So, yeah, so the several of the faculty were very instrumental in prompting me to go get the PhD, and then after getting the PhD, continuing to coach and advise me. The other interesting thing, Rick, is that so when I graduated with my PhD, I taught at the University of South Alabama. Well, let me back up.
Sure, please.
When I was working on my PhD, the dean, he says, "Hey, Jerry," he said, "would you work for me in the dean's office as my administrative assistant?" And I said, "Yeah." So I was kind of like his front guy. He would come into the office and kind of close the door, and so I'd be the one who would be the meter and the greeter and the talking to to the faculty, the students, the parents, and so anyway, when I graduated with the PhD, I taught at the University of South Alabama, and he called me and says, "Hey, Jerry, would you come back to the University of Toledo, work 1/3 time in the dean's office and 2/3 time in mechanical engineering?" I says, "Yeah." So I was only at the South Alabama for 1 year, came back and I was on the faculty then at the University of Toledo for several years. And so I was working 1/3 time as in the dean's office, and that eventually led to me becoming assistant dean of engineering at the University of Toledo.
So you go to South Alabama, you come back to Toledo. What happens from there?
Well, so I still had to do the teaching. I still had to do the research. I had to get the publications. I had to get my tenure. And like I said, I did all of that, and then started working full time as the assistant dean of engineering. And I was just really, really enjoying not only teaching but enjoying university administration. And so from there, I went to Memphis State University, which is now called the University of Memphis. I went there as associate dean of research and graduate studies, and then in 1 year, I was the dean of the engineering college there at Memphis State.
Now, let me pause for a second and talk about family. Was there, you said earlier you were married. Did you have family along the way as you were progressing through that early part of your career?
Oh yeah, so I got married in '72, and in the and so my first child, my son, was born in 1976, and then I also have a daughter that was born in 1980.
So you're
Yep.
not only working hard, you're living the trials and tribulation of being a parent.
Yeah. Yep.
So always fun when you're relocating, right? Trying to find the grocery store and the bank. And all right, so you're down at what's now the University of Memphis, and where does your career go from there?
Well, I was there. Like I said, I went there for as the associate dean of research and graduate studies, and then after 1 year, I was asked to be the dean of the college, and I became dean. I was really enjoying what I was doing there, but I there was an opportunity. An opportunity came up in Los Angeles. They were looking for a dean of the College of Science and Engineering at Loyola Marymount University.
Nice.
Always wanted to live in California. My wife wanted to live in California, so hey, let's pursue this. And so I got the job, and we moved to Los Angeles.
For those that haven't been out to the Los Angeles area and been by the campus of Loyola, it's a stunning, beautiful place to be. So it's by the ocean. It's a pretty campus. So whereabouts did you live when you were there in LA?
So we lived in the area called Westchester,
Okay.
right near, and that's where the campus is located in Westchester, and like you said, close to the ocean. And so we lived about 2 blocks from campus, and then of course we were close to LAX.
Mhm.
There were times when I would walk home from the airport.
Now, how long were you there at Loyola?
14 years.
Wow, that's great. Now, did you stay in California in your next step, or did you go outside of California?
From there, we moved to Phoenix,
Okay.
and where I was vice president for Arizona State University, and also the provost and chief executive officer of what was called back then their East Campus, and I was in charge of changing that campus to what was called the ASU Polytechnic Institute.
Okay. I got you. All right. So yeah, so you've had at that point you're just having a ball. You're having a fun career.
Oh, my entire life, the entire career has just been fantastic.
Yeah, that's exciting. All right, so now I understand why you're now in Phoenix because you kind of earlier in your career had lived there already, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So when we were here, when I was working for Arizona State, we learned too about the Phoenix summers and the heat. And so, but just remember, it's a dry heat. So,
That's right. So since you've got some Phoenix ties, do you realize the other Toledo connection in Arizona, the big one, who was the governor of Arizona, Doug Ducey?
oh yes, yes.
So interesting side story is Doug Ducey. I knew that he was the governor of Arizona, but I didn't realize that Doug Ducey was actually Doug Roscoe when I went to grade school with him at Blessed Sacrament. And then his folks had gone through a divorce when we were in grade school, and he went to St. John's, and I went to Central, so we lost touch. And then come to find out, literally about 5 years ago, that Doug Ducey and Doug Roscoe are the same person. And I didn't know that. He's a proud St. John's graduate, and then went out to Arizona. I think he went to Arizona State, I think, and then started up Cold Stone Ice Cream with his
That's right.
roommate and went on from there. So yeah, another Toledo Connect in Arizona, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So okay, so you're at Arizona State, and then where do things progress from there?
Loved working for Arizona State, and but the next thing that happened was that I got nominated to be president of a university back in Indiana, and
Okay.
that was Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
It's interesting. I have actually it's another side story. When I first got my very first apartment in Lansing, Michigan, a year after I left Toledo, one of the people that lived next to me in the apartment actually finished his master's in sports medicine at Michigan State and went out and became the head athletic trainer at Rose-Hulman. Before that, I had never heard of it, but it's a very prestigious school on the technology side of things for sure.
I'll tell you so landed the job as president at Rose-Hulman. Rose-Hulman is just a phenomenal institution. It's been ranked the best undergraduate engineering program in the country now for like maybe 22 consecutive years.
Absolutely. And don't
And
they have an aeronautical school too there, if my memory's right, don't they? Or not?
no, not
There's more
aeronautical.
pure engineering.
Well, they had mechanical, civil, chemical, electrical, blah blah blah, but not aeronautical.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that, schools like that are really highly sophisticated and highly ranked schools. It's interesting. They always have to come to the University of Toledo to hire their presidents and their provost and their leaders to run those schools. I always find that fascinating, Jerry.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So we take a guy from Toledo Central Catholic and the University of Toledo and we make him president. I love that.
Yep. Yep.
So, okay, so now you're there. Now, do you kind of end your career there, or is that when you went back to California?
You know what? My my wife was originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and with me originally being from Toledo, Ohio. And we said, yeah, after living in Los Angeles, after living in Phoenix, yeah, we can go back to Indiana, and we know what the winters are going to be like. And when we got back there, is what the heck were we thinking?
That
And
did
you know
not
what?
work well.
No, it did not work well, and so it's like let's get back to California, and so then that's where I then went to the California Maritime Academy as vice president and provost and vice president for academic affairs.
That's awesome. Now, talk about the Maritime Academy. I've heard of it from my time living there, but what's the specialty there at the Maritime Academy?
I have to say that I knew absolutely nothing about Maritime Academy before I went for the interview. And so what I come to find out is that there are five state-supported maritime academies in the United States. There's California Maritime Academy, Texas Maritime Academy, Maine Maritime Academy, Massachusetts Maritime Academy, and the New York Maritime Academy. And then there's one federal Maritime Academy. And basically what these maritime academies do is they train students for the graduates from these institutions to work on ships. And so there are basically two tracks, what they call the decky track and the engineering track. And so when I was at California Maritime Academy, all of the students wore uniforms. They had formations every morning, inspections, and so they learn the deckies. They learn how to tie the ropes and cast the nets, and the engineering students, they learn how to keep the ships running.
When I listen to your career path and all the great places you've been, I can't imagine how many great memories that you have of all those different experiences.
And along those lines, let me say that so the California Maritime Academy had its own training ship, and that training ship every summer would take the cadets out so they could put to use the things that they were learning in the classroom. And so I was able to fly to Japan and board the training ship, and then to see firsthand what these students, these cadets, would be doing on board that ship. And so I sailed with the ship from Japan to Wake Island, and then to not Wake Island, but anyway, and then ended up in Saipan. And but just to be on board the ship, and it was Guam. It's Japan to Guam to Saipan, and so it was fun to actually observe what the students are doing and how they're doing it.
So as you're moving and the kids are moving with you along those pathways, what do they do now?
Well, I have two absolutely fantastic kids. My son is graduated with his degree in electrical engineering from Villanova,
Okay.
and so my daughter got her bachelor's, master's, and PhD degrees, and she got her bachelor's and master's degree in education and mathematics, and then her PhD in education.
Wow, that's great. So they're doing well too.
Oh, yes, they are.
That's
And I
awesome.
have to say that it's always tough as a family moving kids, but in the long run, that made them more mature, more self-confident, and determined, if you know what I mean.
Right.
So
Right.
they did well.
Now, you said your wife is from Pittsburgh. Where did you meet her along the way?
But let me just say, I have two wives.
Oh, okay. I got you.
The first wife was originally from Toledo, Ohio. My second wife from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
I got you. I have a fun side story. So a few days ago, my wife's aunt was over, actually hanging out at our pool. Aunt and uncle were over, and as she arrived here, she said, "Hey, I watched your podcast, one of your podcasts last week, and you should really reach out to my brother-in-law. He's a UT grad and he's done really well in the academic world. His name is Dr. Jim Strong, who I think is retired as a provost at Cal State Stanislaus."
I know
And
Jim.
so, well, it's interesting you say that because I'm like, being the modern age guy that I am, right? I go to LinkedIn and I pull LinkedIn up and I type his name in, and it says, "Rick, you have 3 connections to him." And I look it up and you're one of them. And I'm like, how funny is that? Literally within a few weeks, what a small world we live in. But so now, how do you know Dr. Strong?
Well, let me quickly just back up and say that Bill Rood was his advisor.
Is that right?
That is right.
Wow.
And so to answer your question, how do I know Jim? So, like I said, I was provost at California Maritime Academy, and so California Maritime Academy is part of the California State University system.
Okay.
And so the CSU system is run by a chancellor. The chancellor would get together, have all of the presidents and provosts get together periodically. And so Jim was provost at one of the Cal States. I'm drawing a blank now which one, but anyway.
I think Stanislaus is how I think he was.
Yes. And so that's where I met him. And
Isn't that just a small? Now I have to stretch your memory a little bit here. So when you were out at an event for Cal State and you guys bump into each other, how did you figure the connection to Toledo out? Do you remember how that kind of came up at all?
Well, I think I told him I was originally from Toledo, Ohio, and he goes, and I was, from the University of Toledo. He goes, University of Toledo. He said, Bill Rood was, Bill Rood. Bill Rood was my advisor.
Well, hey, all roads lead through Toledo, Ohio, right?
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, I'm doing a shout out to Charlotte Costanzo. That is Jim's first wife's sister, Charlotte. And Jim's first wife passed away. Charlotte's sister passed away a few years ago, but Jim's a great guy. So, what a small, small world we live in.
Yes.
So, now let me ask you this as we move to kind of wrap up our conversation today. I want to take your experience that you've been through in your life and I want to share it to younger folks that might be listening in on the podcast. If you could go back to, let's start at high school. If you go back to high school and talk to a freshman, what would you share with them of things and lessons learned for them that they should think about to shape their career in high school?
I would tell them to ask questions, ask lots and lots and lots of questions, and listen carefully.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's advice I think we all can take at any age.
Yeah, and I wish I would have been better at it. Looking back, I wish I would have been much better at paying attention and asking questions.
Right. Me too, by the way. Me too. Now let's go flash forward 4 years. You're talking to a freshman in college, which you spent most of your career working with those students. What advice do you give someone who's right in their first year, in their freshman year?
First year, freshman year,
Yeah.
study hard, work hard, and just strive for things that you are interested in doing.
So I'm going down memory lane a little bit more here. So let's go back in time to grade school a little bit. And you mentioned St. Vincent de Paul. If my memory's right, I'm not sure if that school is still active or not, but what was it like in that neighborhood when you were growing up near there? What was like that childhood environment like?
Oh, Rick, you know what? There's so many fond memories of grade school and the neighborhood. And so the answer to your question, no, St. Vincent de Paul no longer exists.
Mm-hmm.
But all of the kids that went to St. Vincent de Paul, they walked to school. Everything, we were all within walking distance. I was, just a block away from the school.
Right.
And so just have fond memories of all of my classmates. And then
Right.
after school, we'd be all playing together in the streets and literally in the streets, playing football in the street, playing baseball in the street. And they were great times.
Those are wonderful memories. So I'm grateful for the time that you spent today. I could sit on the phone for 3 or 4 hours and explore all the experiences you had as a teacher, as a professor, as a provost. I'm sure you just are filled with such wonderful experiences to share with the audience. But we'll have to do that another time. How's that?
Yes.
So,
Rick, it's just been a real pleasure and nice seeing you again and good talking to you. And I want to wish you all the best in your pursuit and trying to make connections with all of these UT alum.
That's great. Well, a few podcasts ago, when we ended, one of the guests said, Rick, we've got to do the Rocket Networker Summit. And we need to do it every year, maybe in the summertime in Toledo. And we need to bring everyone that's been on the podcast together because I want to meet all those cool people. And I thought, what a great idea. Are you in? Or what do you think?
Rick, I think that's a fantastic idea. You can count me in. You arrange it and I'll be there.
Good deal. And you know what we'll do? We'll take you over to the river since you've got maritime experience. We'll take you to the Great Lakes Museum, which is on a freighter in the lake. And we'll have you walk down memory lane. How's that?
There you go. Hey, I've been to that to the museum.
All right,
fantastic museum.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. So, well, listen, I'm grateful for your time. Thank you so much. And that's it for this episode of the Rocket Networker podcast. Now it's time to launch connections to ignite your success. And the key question is, are you ready? Are you ready to launch connections to ignite your team's success? Then let's schedule a keynote speech at your next meeting or conference, or a training workshop, or let's do some coaching. Go to rocketnetworker.com and click on the link. It's time to launch connections to ignite your success. Are you ready?